Hey there, YouTubers. All right, so we're going to do a quick install of the 10th gen i3-10100. That's all we're going to do in this video is just install the CPU. In case you've never installed a 10th gen CPU, I will go through this for you. So first thing to do is get your CPU out of the little plastic gizmo. All right, and I'm just going to put it here where it's nice and safe. We're going to come over here to our motherboard, and we're going to take this lever and let it come up like that, and then we're going to pull back this part of the housing. Now, always a good idea to check out your socket, make sure there's no damage before you put your CPU in. So things that we're looking for, and you probably won't see it there. It's amazing how different these are. Yeah, so depending on the motherboard, usually you can easily see that there's a, in this case, there's a little triangle there. And then a lot of times you'll see like a little ball. This case, the way they design this, is very hard to see that. So the reason I bring that up, when you are putting your CPU in there for the first time, you want to look for basically this little triangle in the corner here. And just, so you know, you've got your print here, and you see how it's oriented. The print on the CPU is oriented the same way. So in case you can't remember that the where the triangle is, that is another way to figure that out. Now, other ways to do it, before you drop this in, you can see there's a notch there. You can just barely tell that there's a location right there that that notch is going to go into. So I'm going to gently drop this in here, okay? And it is in place. So I usually, softly just kind of touch it and make sure that it is seated good and it's not moving either, laterally or longitudinally. So it's in there. Now I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to rock it back. I want to make sure this thing slips underneath the fastener. And you don't have to take this black cap off here, black cover. It's going to pop off in a second. So we're basically going to pull this down, and boom. Usually they pop off, almost fly off sometimes. But so the CPU is in there. Now we've got our stock CPU cooler. It has the thermal paste on it. And if you're reusing these, sometimes you have to do this a little differently. But when they're brand new, all you have to do is pop these things in place. Now, I've got since this isn't in a motherboard, sometimes these can be harder to do sitting on something like this, where when you drive this down, it's resisting against the tabletop. So I'm going to put the cell phone at an angle. Or excuse me, have it sitting straight up, and then I'm going to put the motherboard in an angle, and then we'll pop these in place. But things that I'm looking to do, you've got to get this connector out of here without breaking it, hopefully. And the one thing that was nice about the 10th gen was the better cabling they've got. So you can already see these are going to hit the fan blades, so you've got to get those out of there. And this is not the best design in the world. So we're going to get the cables out, work on that, and then we'll orient this so that we can sit it down here. Now on your motherboard, of course, you'll be looking for your CPU fan header. It's right there. Not always in the same spot, but pretty much in the vicinity of the CPU. So let's move on to the next step. All right, so I'm going to take this, put it at an angle. Ideally, You know, some people are like, oh, how come you didn't do that and out of the case? You know, a lot of times I just like to do this in the case because the standoffs create that gap there, right? So you don't have to worry about pushing these into a hard surface. So now that I've got it sitting on here, I've lined up the little cheap plastic mechanisms, and I'm just going to push down on all four of them. Actually, you should go, you do this one, don't do the one next to it, go across from it. And you should hear it snap. Unfortunately, these things are so cheap, they don't always have a nice snap to them. So if we look at the other side of it, you want to make sure that you have all the plastic mechanisms. And there, you can barely see it, but there's a little black protrusion between the two white things there. All right, so we've got our CPU fan in. Now, if you ever have to take this out, basically you're just going to turn this and release. Works pretty good. And we're going to have to do some work on the cable here later on, but basically here's my CPU fan connector. If you can see that up here at the top. This can only fit on there one way. We're going to need to rotate it and put it on the 4-pin there, and boom, it's in place. So let me rotate that around so you can see it. Now these cables here are definitely a hazard, and I really can't say how much I hate the Intel CPU fans, but that's another story. All right, well there you go. That's installing a 10th Gen i3-9100. In this case, it was on the Asus Prime B460m Plus motherboard. So